When bad things happen to us, are we being punished? Short answer? No. Podcast over. That's obviously facetious. You know this podcast isn't over. Hi, I'm Nick. This is 10 Minutes with Nick. And as of this recording, thank you to the 28 people who are listening. I appreciate you. Thanks for being here. You want to join them? There's always more seats at the table. It's not really it's a big table. Let's put it that way. It's a very big table. Anyway, it's important to talk about this, right? It is important to talk about this because we see a lot of bad things in the world, and a lot of bad things happen. And specifically, we have the phrase, bad things, why do bad things happen to good people? It's an existential question humanity has been asking for eons and eons and eons. The nicest people in the world sometimes flourish, sometimes prosper, and sometimes they fail. Sometimes, despite being good people, despite all the wonderful things they do not prosper. Veterans regularly come back from war and end up homeless. They end up with PTSD. They end up with all sorts of problems. Kids who are from good families, they end up with drug problems. Bad things, good people. Does that mean those good people are secretly bad people? Are they being punished for things that we just don't know about? The answer is no. Or at least my theory is the answer is no. Of course, why is that? Numerous reasons. But we're going to start with a reason that comes from a fictional place. We're going to start with something that comes from network television, an episode of Grey's Anatomy. I don't remember the episode name. I don't remember the episode number. There's way too many episodes of Grey's Anatomy. They got to get that under control. Maybe do a new show. Pick a new set of doctors, a new hospital. Just, it's too many episodes. Nobody can remember how many episodes there are, but this episode stands out to me. It was a well-written, actually it was a 2-episode arc. One of the doctors, April Kepner was her name, she was having a crisis of faith. And wouldn't you know it, in the middle of her crisis of faith and at the end of her rope, wouldn't a rabbi come wheeling in through the door? It was discovered the rabbi had a terminal illness. Not only terminal, aggressively terminal, and aggressively painful. Again, couldn't have happened to a nicer guy. And so you had this stark portrayal of a healthy woman who, due to a number of series of unfortunate events, was at the end of her rope in the midst of a crisis of faith, and a rabbi at the very end of his life, not in a crisis of faith. And he begins counseling her. And the point that comes out of that, she asks the question, well, what's the point of believing in God if, I keep getting punished? Why am I being punished? And the rabbi says, who says you're being punished? Look through the book. Is there a promise of, is there any promises in there? Like, when did your faith promise you joy and happiness? Where was that in the book? He specifically notes that he knows the Old Testament, and the Old Testament is littered with suffering. Now, there was some joy at the end of certain suffering, but take Job as one example. The story of Job is a man who is literally the subject of a bet between God and the devil. The devil says, of course Job believes in you. He's got a great life. He would hop off the God train in a second if you took everything away. God rips everything away from Job to prove that Job is a faithful son. Now, at the end of that, of course, he rewards Job for his faith with endless bounty and happiness and everything else. The point of that story being, always have faith in God. But keep in mind, Job was an upright man, a man of faith, a man of God, and everything was stripped away in a moment. And the rabbi notes, he's not as familiar with the New Testament, but he hears that Jesus guy got a raw deal. From what we know about Jesus, Man was a pretty good dude. Far as we know, never committed any sins. Far as we know, nicest guy around, from a good family. Some people would say, like, well, his mother was a little young when she had her, but you know what? It was the old world. It was the old world. By all accounts, whatever society thought of Mary at the time, and obviously now we know Mary to be a wonderful and upright, outstanding woman, Joseph, Jesus' father or adopted father, depending on your belief in the Bible, Joseph was a man of honor in the community. He was known as a man of honor. And Jesus was raised by these people. And he lived his life preaching, essentially, be kind to your neighbor. The golden rule in the Bible being, of course, 2 parts. 1, love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, mind, soul, and body. And 2, love thy neighbor as yourself. Love thy neighbor as thyself. Or love your neighbor as yourself if you don't like the old language. You know what happened to Jesus? And I'm sure you do. Boy got murked. Now, the Romans carried out the execution, the crucifixion. Jesus' own people called for it. His neighbors. His neighbors called for it. People who Jesus probably at some point had been in temple with, had been in prayer with. They became a rabble and called for his execution. And the one thing we know about Jesus is that he had unending faith. He got a pretty raw deal. So why do I bring up all these points? Bad things happen, but they're not punishment. They're just bad things. Truthfully, we can't explain why they happen. And they happen all the time. There's no rhyme or reason that we can understand to bad things happening. And that's the important note I want to make here. I've told you before, I'm going to say it again. I'm an out and proud Christian. There's no rhyme or reason that we as human beings can understand about bad things happening. Now, I'm the first person to tell you that when you are suffering, when you are in mourning, the last thing anybody should say to you is, oh, well, God has a plan. I've been through unimaginable loss here. And I got to tell you, I had people tell that to me. I about sent my fist through their face. It's not comforting. It's not, and quite honestly, it's just not. Frankly, it's just not. It doesn't help. It's not something you say to somebody who's been through loss or who is in the midst of suffering. And this podcast is not just for religious types, it's for secular types as well. You got to remember that you're not being constantly weighed and measured. You're not. Don't think about life like that. Because if you do, then the only reason you do something good is to try and balance the cosmic scales. You can't. That's not a burden that a human being should have to bear. Bad stuff happens. You're not being punished if it happens to you. All you can do is stand up in the middle of it. I still haven't stood up, quite honestly. I'm still 2 shades short of useless. Being useless would be an upgrade for me. It really would. If you're going through it, you're not being punished. Take comfort in that. And if you're going through it, keep going. I can't promise you heaven's on the other side. I can promise you that you're not in hell either. Take some comfort in that. And take some comfort in knowing that some of the nicest people on the face of the earth, they suffered as you suffer. And they continue to suffer. It's not nice, it's not pretty, but it does let you know that when something bad happens to you, it's not punishment. It's just a burden. And that's okay. It's the human experience. And important to keep in mind, a small note here at the end of this that I'll try to make this a little bit more uplifting at the end. When good things happen to you, you have more control over the good things in life. Typically when they happen to you, it is some type of reward for either your hard work, being in the right place at the right time, or just dumb luck. And you know what? That's comforting, knowing that you have control over good things that happen. And if bad things happen, you know what? It's not because you didn't do enough good things. It's simply because your number got pulled. It's okay. You, me, we're going to go through bad things together. You, me, Mahatma Gandhi, the Dalai Lama, everybody in between. We're all going to go through bad things together. And then we're going to keep working towards those good things. For now, this is a 10-minute podcast. I've gone to 12 minutes. Like I said, being useless would be an upgrade. I'm Nick. This was a somewhat comedic and somewhat somber 10 minutes with Nick. If you enjoyed it, like and subscribe. If you didn't enjoy it, I don't blame you today. This was not a fun one. I almost cried in the middle of it. So, like and subscribe, or don't. Leave a comment telling me how I could be better, or don't leave a comment. Up to you. It's your life. Go do good things. And if something bad happens, we're together. I'm Nick. This is 10 Minutes with Nick. Have a great day.